Jim Candy Part 1, Chapter 3. You can go along thinking your dad's perfect for a long time, but not forever. I don't know exactly when I started to figure out that everything didn't add up. Maybe fourth or fifth grade, but for sure by middle school I knew. My mom worked at a bank in the loan department. She worked regular hours like everybody else's parents, but my dad's job was different, which was why he was the one who took me to practices and why he was home most days after school. He had the early shift, 5 to 10 in the morning, at a talk radio station that covered sports 24 hours a day. The show was called Ben in the AM. Ben Braun was the host and did 75% of the talking. My dad was the second guy. I fill in when Ben runs out of things to say, he said, explaining his job to Grandpa Leo one Christmas. But let me tell you, that isn't too often. Ben Braun had been to our house a few times, but only a few because my mom didn't like him. He was a little guy with strangely short arms, a loud voice, and a louder laugh. He talked with his mouth full of food, and when he told a joke, he'd bang his fist down on the table, making the silverware jump. The man is obnoxious, my mom said every time he left. Absolutely obnoxious. He's my boss, my dad would say. We've got to invite him over sometimes. Ben Braun had never played any sport, so I didn't understand why he talked so much while my dad said so little. He's got the radio voice and he's got the college degree, my dad explained when I asked him about it. That's the way it works. I tried to listen to the show before I went to school. I wanted to like it, but I had trouble following it. Sometimes they'd talk about movie stars or singers for 10 minutes straight. One thing I did notice, instead of calling my dad Mike, lots of times Ben Braun would say, "Let's see what Mr. Third Rounder has to say about that." And then he'd laugh that big laugh of his. I'd probably heard him call my dad Mr. Third Rounder a dozen times before I asked my mom why he did that. She flushed red. "Because Ben Braun is a mean man," she said. "A mean man with a cruel streak of humor. I wish your father didn't have to work with him, and I wish you wouldn't listen to him." I didn't say anything more. I knew she didn't want to talk about it, whatever it was. But all day at school I thought about it. Mr. Third Rounder, Mr. Third Rounder, Mr. Third Rounder. After school that day, I went downstairs to the den and looked once more at the framed headlines. The last one read, "Mike Johnson selected in third round." That had always been my favorite headline because it meant my dad had made it to the NFL. So what was funny about it? What was Ben Braun laughing at? I stared at the headline and stared at it, and then I got it. I got Ben Braun's joke. The wall next to that framed article was bare. It was my wall to fill. But that's what was wrong, that bare wall. It had always been wrong, and for a long time some part of me had known it. I followed the NFL. First-round picks are absolute locks to make it. To be selected in the third round, you still have to be one of the best college football players in the nation. Joe Montana, the greatest quarterback of all time, was a third-round draft choice. My dad should have played professional football for 10 years. The bare wall should have been full of NFL headlines, but there wasn't one. He'd grabbed the headlines in college. As a pro, he'd done nothing. I climbed back upstairs. My dad was in the kitchen, sitting on a stool, eating peanuts. "I thought I heard you come in," he said. "How about we go to the park, throw the ball around a little? I want to give you practice catching balls that come you over the wrong shoulder." "Yeah, sure," I said, but instead of moving, I just stood there. "Well," he said, reaching for his jacket, "are we going?" "Dad, did you ever play for the Chargers?" He put the jacket down. "I got drafted by the Chargers. Third round, you know that." "But did you ever play?" "A couple of preseason games, yeah." "And then what happened?" His voice went flat. "Then I sprained my ankle, a high ankle sprain, the worst kind. My foot turned purple from my toe to my calf. I tried to come back too early, and I re-sprained it. The Chargers kept me on their injured reserved list, hoping I'd recover, but it never came around. It still isn't right." "So it was an injury? That's why you didn't play?" "I just told you. Why all the questions?" "No reason." We went to the park then, but he didn't pay much attention to what I was doing. Didn't offer suggestions. We quit after half an hour. After dinner, I half watched television, half played video games, and then took a shower and went to bed. Around 9:30, my mom came in to say goodnight, which was normal. Later, I was almost asleep when the door opened again and my father came in, which wasn't. "You awake, Mick?" he said as he sat down on the edge of the bed. "Yeah, Dad," I said. "I'm awake." For a while he just sat. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "I don't want you to think my NFL career amounted to nothing, because that's not true. The house you're living in, the bed you're sleeping in, the furniture, you know who bought those things?" He tapped himself on the chest. I bought them, that's who. And do you know how I bought them? I bought everything with my money from the San Diego Chargers. $500,000. That's what my signing bonus was. That's NFL money. Money I made as a professional football player. $500,000. That's not nothing, Mick. And don't ever let anybody tell you it is. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I understand, I said, a little frightened of him. All right then, he said. Go to sleep. After he left, I lay in the dark, confused not by what he had said, but what he hadn't. For the first time, I understood that deep down inside, my dad was unhappy. I'd always bragged some to the guys at school and on my teams about what a great football player my dad had been. It makes no sense, but after that night, I bragged more than ever. Every one of his stories grew in my retelling. If he told me he broke 4 tackles and scampered 33 yards against Stanford, or turned a 5-yard swing pass into a 25-yard touchdown against Oregon, then I told my friends that he broke 6 tackles and raced 48 yards against Stanford and broke 60-yard touchdown pass against Oregon. You'd think I would have kept my mouth shut. So this is one of those moments where he realizes his idol isn't everything he thought he was when he was younger. He always thought his dad played in the NFL, which was true, but he didn't play very long in the NFL. So this is kind of a childhood dream bubble being popped here, and he realizes that his dad didn't really fulfill his dream as much as he wanted to, nor is his dad currently that happy in life right now.